Today, we are going to completely flip the script on heart health. We're diving into a pretty controversial take that suggests some of the foods you've been warned against your whole life might be the best things for your heart.
This question really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? What if the road to a stronger heart isn't paved with kale smoothies and handfuls of walnuts? What if it's actually paved with some of the very foods we've been taught are the enemy?
Okay, so let's get into it. The source for today's breakdown, Dr. Eric Berg, throws this idea out there, and it's provocative. It's a really bold statement, and it basically sets the stage for a total reversal of a lot of common dietary advice.
So to really understand this contrarian diet, we first have to look at what it's pushing back against. You know, the usual suspects, the so-called superfoods that you see all over health blogs and magazine covers. Yeah, we all know these names, right? But the argument here is that while they might have some good things in them, they're missing some really crucial pieces of the puzzle. For example, that omega-3 precursor in flaxseed called ALA, turns out our bodies are really, really bad at converting it into the forms we actually need for our brain and heart. That's DHA and EPA. And this right here, this concept is absolutely key. Bioavailability. See, it's not just about what a food contains, it's about what your body can actually absorb and use. Think of it this way. It's the difference between having a $100 bill in your hand versus a check that you can't cash for a week. One is immediately useful. The other, not so much. Okay, so now that we've kind of poked some holes in the common superfood story, let's get to the main event, the top 10 list of what this contrarian view considers to be the true superfoods for the heart. And you might want to brace yourselves because number 1 is really designed to make you sit up and pay attention.
And there it is, number 1, red meat. The one food that for decades has been at the very top of the do not eat list for anyone worried about their heart. But the source material for this explainer argues that high-quality, grass-fed red meat isn't just okay, it's profoundly beneficial.
So why in the world red meat? Well, the argument is all about fueling the heart muscle itself. Your heart is just packed with these tiny little energy factories called mitochondria. Red meat provides stuff like CoQ10 and Carnitine, which are basically like high-octane rocket fuel for those factories. It also has something called stearic acid, a specific fat that's said to help repair those factories and just make them run a whole lot better. All right, let's move on to our next controversial contender, grass-fed butter. Yep, another food we're constantly told to swap out for some kind of vegetable oil spread. But in this view, it's presented as a major player in keeping your arteries healthy. Now, this star player here is vitamin K2. I want you to think of K2 as a traffic cop for calcium in your body. Its main job is to tell calcium, hey, go over here to the bones, instead of letting it build up and harden your arteries. Butter is also a fantastic source of butyrate, which is amazing for your gut health and for tamping down inflammation all over your body. Coming in at number 3, egg yolks. Man, for years, the yolk was made out to be this evil villain because of its cholesterol. This perspective says, whoa, that was a huge mistake, and argues that the yolk is where all the nutritional magic is actually happening. The key thing to get here is that the nutrients in the yolk do really essential jobs. Choline helps your liver process fat, which helps prevent a fatty liver, something that puts a lot of stress on the heart. And cholesterol, it's not the bad guy. It's the raw material your body needs to make really important things, like vitamin D and your hormones. All right, we have covered the big 3 most controversial items on the list. Now let's kind of do a lightning round through the rest of these unexpected heroes for your heart. But hang on, before we go on, let's just zoom in on vitamin K2 again for a second, because it's a recurring hero in this entire story. The central claim is that K2 is one of the most important but most overlooked nutrients for your cardiovascular system. And it's all because of that job it does preventing what's called arterial calcification, or hardening of the arteries. Okay, so at number 4, we've got cheese, specifically the good stuff, aged, raw cheeses. They're not only packed with K2, but they also have compounds that are said to act like natural ACE inhibitors, which help relax your blood vessels. Number 5 is shellfish, things like oysters and clams. They're just incredible sources of trace minerals our soils don't really have anymore. And at number 6, organ meats. Yeah, I know, but just listen. Liver is basically nature's own multivitamin. Rounding out our list, at number 7 we have fermented foods. The Japanese dish natto gets a special shout-out because it contains something called nattokinase, an enzyme that's believed to help reduce excessive blood clotting.
Number 8 is unrefined sea salt, argued to be absolutely essential for proper hydration. Number 9 is fatty fish. That one's probably not a huge surprise. And finally, number 10 is collagen, from things like bone broth. It provides the building blocks to help keep your arteries flexible and healthy. So, okay, we've just gone through 10 very different foods, everything from red meat to fermented soybeans. What is the unifying theory here? What are the principles that tie all of this together?
It really boils down to these 4 big ideas. First, fuel your heart's energy centers. Second, stop focusing on just volume and start prioritizing true, bioavailable nutrient density. Third, make getting enough vitamin K2 a top priority to manage where calcium goes in your body. And fourth, and this is a big one, you got to be willing to question decades of dietary advice about what's actually healthy.
And all of this brings us to the big picture. Look, the purpose of this explainer isn't to give anyone medical advice. It's about presenting a really well-defined, alternative way of thinking about what a heart-healthy diet could even look like. So if there is one core idea to take away from all this today, it's this. The argument is that we should shift our focus, stop being so afraid of things like fat and cholesterol, and start actively seeking out the most nutrient-dense, bioavailable foods we can possibly find.
And that leaves us all with a pretty important question, doesn't it? When experts are offering such dramatically different roadmaps to health, it really forces us to get more involved, to ask more questions, and to think a lot more critically about the choices we make for ourselves every single day. Thanks for tuning in.